team went 9-4 a couple years ago, and garnished a lot of excitement that we haven't seen since 2007. A lot of that centered around Lance Leipold because of the work he did at Buffalo, and that he is now viewed as a program builder type that can come in and clean up messes and build. And the other portion of the excitement was Jalen Daniels, of course. Now he's entering a 6th year as a quarterback in college football, 14 touchdowns, 12 picks. So fun to watch most of the time, but the big mistakes and needing to gain consistency and, of course, stay away from injuries.
Yeah, the injury bug was kind of the big question coming into last year, and he was able to make it through fully healthy. That's the good news for Kansas and Jalen Daniels. The bad news is, even though the health was fully there last season, the performance wasn't quite there. The first 5 games of the season were a little more up and down. He was getting acclimated with the new offensive coordinator. He had a little bit of rust to kind of shake off because he had some injury stuff during the offseason that prevented him from getting a lot of reps and opportunities with the team and the receivers. And the hope is that this year it's going to kind of put it all together, that the health was shown to be put together last year, that can carry over to this year. He flew out some of his receivers or all the receivers to California. That was something we learned during Big 12 media days and through with them, that you kind of move the rust off. The offensive coordinator is a new offensive coordinator, but it's an old offensive coordinator because Jim Zabrowski got promoted to the job from quarterbacks coach. And so the hope is that those kind of 3 things merge together in a real way, that this is going to be his best season and that he's going to kind of go out on top at Kansas.
Kind of connecting 2025 and what we expect to see and what we did see in 2024 was obviously a disappointing season, but a run in November that went right through the likes of Colorado, BYU, Iowa State, arguably the 3 best teams outside of Arizona State in the conference. So was that simply what you just explained about Jalen Daniels kicking it in, or was it like, where did this team come from, or did some other things come into play? Maybe some guys got healthy that showed what this team was capable of.
You know, it's funny because they probably, I shouldn't say they should have beat Arizona State. Like, Arizona State probably deserved to win that game, but they could have beat Arizona State in that game. They were leading with under 2 minutes to go, and then Arizona State marched down the field. But there were a few plays that, if this goes their way, that maybe they do end up on top of that game, and then they would have beaten the top 4 teams in the conference, which is pretty crazy. There were no health things over the back half of the season. There was a bye week, sort of the middle of the season, where it seemed like they started to reintroduce some of their past concepts a little bit more than what Jeff Grimes, the previous, last year's offense coordinator, was doing a little bit more, and started going back to some of the stuff they were doing previously with Andy Kotelnicki, where it felt like there was a little bit more pulse on it from Jim Zabrowski, who was the quarterback coach, now turned offensive coordinator. That was part of it. I think Jalen just getting a little more comfortable with what they were asking him to do with the offense, kind of getting to that point and starting to just kind of focus on the little things again as a team for Kansas. This was always a team that was kind of better than their record over the course of the season. I mean, you mentioned some of the performances they had against some of the better teams, but it's a team who started the season 0-5 in 1-score games. And obviously they finished 1-5 because of the BYU game, but really it could have been 0-6. The TCU game was the game they were leading with, I think, 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. They ended up losing just beyond 1 score. But if you're looking at games that are essentially coin flip games, they were 0-6 in them. And so if they go 2-4 in those games, if they go 3-3 in those games, the record is much different. They were a much better team than the record indicated last season. And that was kind of the case for, last year in which, okay, the 3 ranked wins showed that this team had a lot more talent, had a lot more ability than was necessarily the case. Even though you looked at it and when they win the first couple of those ranked games, they're a 2 or 3 win team.
We appreciate everyone stopping by, breaking down college football, of course, specifically the Big 12 this week. We got Derek Johnson here. Jackson, thank you so much for posting Derek's link there to his Locked On channel right there. You can catch him breaking down Kansas football and Kansas athletics every day. And we appreciate Derek being here. So Devin Neal moves on as the all-time leading rusher. Le'Shawn Williams comes in from Iowa. Also, Daniel Highshaw is a guy that some people are familiar with that catch the Big 12 on a regular basis because he was a main contributor Talk about some of the other weapons that are going to be surrounding Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, so Highshaw's the big one. He's somebody who was honestly splitting carries with Devin Neal in 2022. And then he has a dislocated hip injury, just awful injury. He had to get, ambulanced off in the Iowa State game that year. And then he comes back 2023. He shows flashes. Same with 2024, but kind of had to deal with some injury stuff over the course of the season. But he's got some awesome highlights. Powerful running back. If you want to go back and watch a fun one, he catches a swing pass. Go look Kansas Duke, Daniel Highshaw. That's a fun one to go back to watch. This dude is, I think, set up to, as long as he can stay healthy, have 1,000-yard plus season. But I think LaShawn Williams is somebody who's going to get a good amount of run. I think they feel good about the running backs. They've recruited the position well over recent years, too. It's not Devin Neal, but I think it'll be good enough to be successful there, especially with what you have seen this staff do, whether it was at Buffalo and now at Kansas at that position. The receiver position is a really interesting one because they lose 3 starting receivers, and it's not just starting receivers, it's 3 starting receivers for really the last 3 seasons for Kansas. And you go from having all that continuity, you go from having the guys who know the offense and who are good intermediate route runners and good contested catch players. But now you go into a group of a lot of new transfers into the program, and Emmanuel Henderson is kind of the guy leading that charge. He's a former top 100 recruit, goes to Alabama as a running back recruit, moves to receiver, gets, kind of behind in the depth chart to guys like Ryan Williams, for instance. But then he has that big catch against Georgia, and, he doesn't have like a huge statistical season, but you can kind of understand being behind some of the guys there. Now he comes to Kansas, and he's kind of expected to be the number 1 receiver. You're seeing the speed in some of the offseason practices. Like, he seems like somebody who can be an absolute stud for KU. And so I think there's going to be a little bit more juice, a little bit more speed on the outside than some of the previous years that this team has had. There's going to be a little bit more uncertainty in terms of what given level of production you have coming back. But I think the ceiling might actually be higher at that position. So it'll be interesting to see Jalen kind of throwing to those guys. And running back, yeah, like I said, I don't think it's Devin Neal, but I think still feel good about the position.
Got our guy, Ed Rogers, jumping in the chat. Before we look at the defense, we'll throw this one at you, Derek, because it seems as though in the Big 12, what makes it fun is if you're just looking for a football game to watch and you just arbitrarily want to find one that's going to be close and you don't know who's going to win, you might as well just watch a Big 12 game, number one. Number two is this gives hope where every other conference, there is this kind of generated, false hope that everyone has, just thinking, I want college football to be here and I hope my team, fill in the blank, Purdue, Wake Forest, whoever can compete. But truly in the Big 12, almost everybody can say, you know what, why not?
Yeah, and I think Arizona State, because of that, if you ask that same question, can blank team from the Big 12 make the playoffs? I think you would have to answer yes. Arizona State was picked last in the Big 12 last year, and they end up winning the conference and nearly beating Texas in the college football playoff too. So you look at it too, again, we go back to last year, Kansas beat, if you look at the top 4 teams in the conference as being Colorado, BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State, Kansas beat 3 of them. And they were leading with under 2 minutes to go against the other one in Arizona State. So from that perspective, yes, I don't think it is outlandish to say that as much as it would have been, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. You look at the schedule too for Kansas, like one of the good things for them, they're avoiding Baylor. Baylor is a team that traditionally, they just for whatever reason have not been able to beat Baylor. Well, they're off the schedule. Okay, Utah is seen as one of the other top teams that could be really good this year in the Big 12. The good news for Kansas, that's a home game. That's going to be senior day for Kansas. So they're going to be amped up. They're going to be juiced up for that to be the case. They've beat Iowa State 3 straight times now. They get Kansas State at home this year, which that'll be nice with their new stadium, and they get it coming off a bye in which Lance Leipold and company have done well off of a bye. Their conference opener against West Virginia comes after a bye week. So you look at some of the things that I'm not expecting them to make the college football playoff, but I don't think it's outlandish to say that they could either.
Derek, the defense was pretty bad last year, 75th in total defense or scoring defense, 92nd overall. But I see we're 7 of 8 coming back along the defensive front. Dean Miller's a really good player with 6 sacks. How do you check out the defensive side here?
Really interesting with the coordinator change too. DK McDonald comes in for Brian Borland, and felt like the defense, kind of maybe took a slight step back last year, kind of plateaued from where it was the season before. But now you come into this year with the new coordinator, and the beauty of DK McDonald, he comes from the Iowa State kind of coaching tree, I guess. He was a defensive backs coach for the Cyclones with all those years under John Heacock. They're having success. Then he goes off to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a DB coach, then comes to Kansas, learns the program, the system, Lance Leipold for just a brief time, and then he gets promoted to defensive coordinator. You look at Iowa State, I mean, that is, if you're talking about what is the bar of defenses in the Big 12, Iowa State has consistently been one of the best defenses in the conference and really, frankly, the country for the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, to where having that matters, I think, to me a little bit in terms of, what can you get schematically from an improvement there from the defense. And then, you talk about the defensive line, having Dean Miller back, having Justice Finkley, a transfer in from Texas at defensive end, Alex Bray, a transfer in from Illinois. And then the defensive tackle spot, I think, is the spot that they feel the best about on the defense. They feel like they're 5 or 6 guys deep, that it's going to be a good rotation of guys that, we'll see if one guy breaks out to being like an all Big 12 level player, but just at the very least that they'll have 5 or 6 guys they could constantly rotate there. The linebacker core, that's been an issue for Kansas in past years. Like J.B. Brown was really good the past couple of years. Cornell Wheeler before injury was pretty good for Kansas, but they've had either injuries there, a lack of depth, or, a lack of talent. And this year they just hammered that in the transfer portal. And they feel like this could be their best linebacker core since they've been here. So I think the front 7 is going to be the strength of the defense. The back end is where there's more questions because you lose Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson. At the same point in time, they've recruited those positions well. They've brought in some interesting transfers that if the front 7 can be better, if you're in more, 3rd and 8s, it's going to make the back 4 even better, back 5, right? And that's also where I think McDonald comes into play of being this guy who has all this, success coaching defensive backs. And when you think of Iowa State specifically, where he came from previously from the college ranks, like they've had so much success with defensive backs, whether it's guys getting drafted or just success as a passing defense. I think that's what gives you hope that, okay, can this Kansas defense, be top 50? Can they go from being outside the top 70? Can they be 45th? Can they be 50th and then have an explosive offense? And maybe that's enough to, go over. I know the win total over under 7.5, for instance, or if we go back to that question about could they make a college football playoff? I think this is a unit that could be better than some are expecting coming into the year.
Derek Johnson here breaking down Kansas football. Catch him on Locked On at Jayhawks. The link is in the chat, and you've got Derek's X/Twitter handle right there on the banner. You can follow him right there.